Hey guys, this is Shane here from Echo Soundworks. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the best free plugins you can download in 2020. So a couple things I want to get out of the way before we dive into the rest of the video. We're going to omit Max for Live devices that are free in this video because that would only be applicable to Ableton Live users. And for the Pro Tools users out there, not all of these plugins will work with Pro Tools. Some of them will, but that's kind of a limitation of the AX licensing situation that Avid has going on. So that being said, most of these free plugins will work Windows and Mac in multiple DAWs. Let's take a look at the best free plugins of 2020. All right, so first up is a drum machine / drum sampler. It's called SITALA, and it's made by Decomposer. Now, there's a lot of cool features in this. I'm going to spend most of my time showing you guys some features that I don't really see in a lot of other drum machine / drum samplers out there, even if they're paid and premium. So let's quickly run through what we have here. It starts you off with an 808 kit because we all need more of this snare. All right, so you have 6 controls over to the right. You have shape, which is like a transient shaper. So you can tighten up samples. You have a tuning knob, compression, tone, which is a couple different filters, and then pan. You can double click to get these all back to their default position. Now you have 16 sample slots or pads. So before Logic finally updated the Drum Machine Designer in 10.5, I used SITALA all the time because it was just better than what Logic had as its stock offering. Now, if you use another DAW like Ableton, there's gonna be some redundancy here, but I don't know about every other DAW, so depending on what you use, this might be a better option for you. Another really cool feature that it has is the ability to hot swap samples. So let's say we're gonna build a drum kit that's not just all one type of sound. You guys know what a drum kit is. Let's say I want some kicks, some claps, I want some spice, some variety of life in there. Well, here's a really cool feature it has. So we're gonna go back to that folder and we're gonna take a kick. I'm not even gonna care about the kick I take. I just might be like, well, I'm in the key of F, so let's try one of these Fs. All right, I like the hi-hat and the snare. Not a fan of that kick for this vibe. So here is where SITALA actually outshines a lot of paid plugins. It will remember the folder in which you drag the sample in from, and I can hover over this and now just hot swap through it. So if I had my MIDI programmed, I could have it playing while I do this, or I can just click through. Next up is a plugin that will tell you if your music is loud enough. That's probably one of the most important questions of life to a producer. Is my track loud enough? This is a loudness metering plugin. I don't really need to explain it. It reads it out in LUFS. It has a couple nice little readouts. This loudness range and dynamic range is nice. It helps you see and hear if your track is a squashed little sausage, which might not be a good thing for the genre that you're working on. And it can help you see if you have too much of a difference between sections of your track. So to highlight that, I open up the session, I turn down all the instruments in the build a little bit, and we're gonna be able to see and hear that the build in this track is a little too quiet in terms of its relationship to the drop. All right, next up is a plugin that should need no introduction if you make electronic music, and that is OTT. Now, this one's made by XFER Records, same company, same people who bring you Serum. So this exists because of a preset to a multi-band compressor in Ableton called OTT. So it's really interesting because I don't think I've ever seen a preset in a plugin become so popular, so widely used, and become so influential in shaping the sound of a genre that other companies are like, let's make a plugin based around that concept. But that's what we have here. So I'm not going to spend much more time explaining this. I will show you, we will pop it on the vocal shop right here and A/B it, but it is the OTT, need I say more. If you guys don't use Ableton and you somehow don't know about this, go grab it. It's great on leads, basses, any type of synth. It just brightens things up and just gives it that shine, that quality that a lot of times you're looking for. Next up, we have a plugin that I can neither pronounce the name of the company that makes it or the name of the plugin. I almost considered not including it on the list for those reasons, but it's a really cool plugin. It's a phaser flanger chorus plugin. It's made by, I believe the company's called KLEVGR, and the name I think is SVEP. This is super European sounding. So it's phaser, flanger, and chorus. The GUI is pretty cool. You have these two circles and then two smaller circles inside of it. So this is your left side, and that's your right side of the modulation. You can link and unlink those, and you have a dry wet control at the bottom, and you have your mono stereo. So I'm gonna put it on this kind of chopped up synth right here. So we're not gonna hear any sound yet of the actual effect. And we go to the second circle, the plus, and start to drag up, and we'll see that shapes will happen essentially. And if I crank this up and we have both of these controls up, we're gonna hear a crazy kind of blippy sound. Right, so that's not how I use it. I use it just to sprinkle in some little bit of phaser, a little bit of flanger, sometimes chorus if you push a little bit higher. We'll turn the wet down. It just adds a little bit of vibe. Here we have the A1 stereo control by HILTON. So this is a very feature-rich stereo processing plugin. Now, I use it all the time. I actually probably use this in every session that I work on. There's a couple features that I really like. One of those is the safe bass feature. So oftentimes I'll be working in a genre that has some type of detuned saw bass or kind of a detuned square bass, like this one. And sometimes I need to narrow the stereo field of that, and other times I want to spread out the high end of it if it's more of a top bass. And I can do both of those things with this plugin. So for instance, I can turn on this safe bass feature, and anything under the cutoff or threshold here in hertz will be mono compatible or be mono. So if we look at our phase multimeter here, when I play this bass, when it goes over to the left in this red, that means that it's heading towards anti-phase or true stereo. We want to keep a bass generally a little bit more on this right side. So if I turn on safe bass, check out the difference. We'll set this to about 170 hertz. Right, and in context of a mix, that really does help tighten things up, especially those low frequencies. You don't want those fluttering around left and right. So that's really cool. Now you can take it a step further and of course locate where your actual frequencies are coming from. Right, and then set the safe bass value accordingly. But now what I can do is I can actually spread this out. I'll just crank it up so you can hear it. And we're still fairly in the green or the yellow. We haven't crossed over to the red like we have when the plugin is just bypassed, and I crank the stereo up all the way. So now what we can do is we can solo certain sections of this, which is really cool. So let's mute the mid. So now it's just the side. Right, and then we'll mute the side. And then all together in the context. All right, and here we have what's probably my favorite clipping or soft clipping plugin. It's called Free Clip by VENN Audio. They do have a paid version of this, but for me personally, the free clip gets the job done. So it is really easy to use. You have a knob here in the middle that has all these different types or algorithms for the clipping. And it's interesting, it says soft clip type, but the first one is a hard clipper. So that doesn't make sense. You have these different modes of soft clipping, and as you go over to the right, they get more subtle as you go over to the, as you get further away from that hard clipper. At the bottom, you have input gain, an oversampling selection, and output, and then you have a ceiling right here, clip ceiling. So I use soft clipping all the time to squeeze a little bit more loudness out of either a one-shot sample when I'm making samples for our packs, or it could be a loop as well, and I also use it when I'm working on tracks. So here's an example of a drop where the snare just isn't peeking out of the mix enough, and I'm going to soft clip it to get some more volume. All right, so I'm going to use the cubic algorithm. I'm going to take my input gain. We're gonna go and take our ceiling down to about, we'll do -1 dB, and we'll keep the output at about 0.3, just so we're not getting any like true clipping going on. And that's all it takes sometimes to get something like a snare to stand out a little bit more in the mix. You can just use a little bit of soft clipping to make it a little bit more present and loud. But yeah, check this plugin out, guys. It is an awesome clipping plugin. All right, next up we have Softube's Saturation knob. Now, this one came out a couple years ago, but it's still a high quality plugin. I find myself using it all the time. And it's a pretty versatile, simple plugin, which is a hard balance to strike when you're creating a plugin like this. So down here at the bottom, we have the switch that says saturation type. Now, I think this is kind of a mislabeled section of the plugin. I don't know why Softube did this, because this isn't a type of saturation. A type of saturation would be like a tube saturator, a tape saturator. This is more of how the saturation is applied to the frequencies you do saturate. So neutral will apply the saturation evenly across the frequency spectrum, or fairly evenly. Keep high will try to keep the highs how they were, and keep low will keep the lows how they were, so they focus, in the opposite direction. So that makes it really versatile. You can use it on a wide range of sounds, because you can basically tell it to ignore these frequencies and focus on these frequencies. So I actually want to use a saturator in this track here. I need to bring out the top bass a little bit more. Here's what it sounds like. I want a little bit more harmonic richness to this bass. Right, so here we're gonna turn on the saturation plugin, and I'm gonna have keep highs on. So there it is, cranked up. And anytime I'm saturating things, I like to do a quick A/B that's fairly volume matched, just so I'm not getting tricked into thinking that the saturated version is better because it's louder. Usually it's louder and there's more harmonics. So here it is without the saturation, peaking about -9.6. Here it is with the saturation and some volume matching. And now in the context of the mix, we can see if we like it. And without it. So I actually like it with the saturation. I'm just gonna turn it down just a little bit. Finally, we have Valhalla's Supermassive. So I saved the best for last. This plugin just came out maybe about a month or two ago, and all of Valhalla's plugins are about 50 bucks. And after I had this for a couple days, I thought, yep, I would have spent 50 bucks on this. It's an incredible plugin. So Supermassive is a reverb plugin for creating ambient sounds, sonic soundscapes, things that are dripping in reverb and delay. So if you're thinking, well, I don't produce a lot of ambient stuff. Well, even if you're making house music right now, a trend in house music, like Medusa does this all the time. They take like one vocal sample, throw on a boatload of reverb, and hit one note and have that sustain the entire time of the verse, or build up, or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of uses for this, and you can kind of coerce it into being more of a conventional reverb, but it's not the type of reverb you're going to use like on a lead vocal. So you have 8 different algorithms here, or different modes, and they all have their own unique sonic characteristic. Of course, you have presets. So let's try one of the A small. Let's do Reverb 2000, and this is just a vocal sound that I brought into a sampler. Right, so there it is without reverb, and here it is with that preset. Right, so that's one of the small reverbs in Supermassive. Let's try out one of the large ones. So we'll go to Reverb, we'll go to Z Massive, and let's do Final Frontier. Now for this, I'm not gonna play the same progression because it's just too long. I'll play it slower. So if I crank the mix up, will actually make a great pad. All right, so that's gonna sum up this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, you can post those below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you guys aren't subscribed to our channel, you know the drill. Hit that subscribe button. The support really does mean a lot to us. And if you guys haven't ever checked out our website, echosoundworks.com, definitely head on over there. There's a ton of free content, samples, loops, and presets. And of course, there's some premium sound sets and sample packs as well. And lastly, if you guys use Instagram, consider giving us a follow. We run a lot of contests, giveaways, and promotions on that platform. And I think you guys will like what we're doing over there. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.